And here we go, episode 38 of the Baschamania podcast. Guys, I need forgiveness for this episode. I am super pumped to have two-time world champion J'den Cox on the podcast today, but I'm recording this intro after I recorded the episode and recorded the conversation with J'den. And unfortunately, once I went back and started editing, I realized there are not massive, but for me, massive audio issues. If you listen to this podcast, you know I really focus hard on quality. I try to make sure that everything is edited nice, is recorded nice, use nothing but studio equipment, but every now and then a blunder happens, and that's what happened today. I'm probably making it out to be bigger than it is, but the issue is just that instead of my studio mic, for some reason, the Skype call recorder picked up my MacBook mic. So it's not the end of the world. It's just not the quality that I really try hard to put out. All that to say, I hope it doesn't take away from how much substance is in this episode, where J'den and I talk about everything from his recent transition to 97 kilos in the Olympic trials to mental health struggles and depression in his walk with Jesus and the role that his faith has had on his career. So get comfortable and get ready as J'den just drops golden nugget after golden nugget. So enjoy this episode. Sorry again for the audio issues. If you listen to this podcast regularly, you know the quality is usually better than this, but this substance is too good in this podcast to just dismiss or try to re-record. If you enjoy this episode, if you enjoy this podcast, be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you subscribe on Apple, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. With all that said, let's roll the intro.
It's Baschamania! Let me tell you something, brother. He gave us everything he had in him tonight. What you gonna do when Baschamania runs wild on? Oh, it's gonna be a good one. And business just picked up here on the podcast. Oh, yeah.
Mr. J'den Cox, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Justin?
I'm doing good, man. I've wanted to have this conversation since I want to say like March 2017. I remember I was at NCAA's, and you know how they do like those video clips before the tournament, before the rounds, all that. And they did one of those videos, and it was you singing "Thy Will Be Done." And it got me, dude. As a Christian, like, it got me. And I remember that video, like, vividly. It was kind of ending with you singing the words, like, I don't understand how a broken heart is a part of your plan. And I loved that song, but I also loved your story. And hearing and getting to know you more and more, I think it's more powerful. When you hear about your broken heart that you've had in the past and everything you've gone through, like, it's powerful. So, like I was just telling you before, this thing could go for hours, so I'm glad you're kind of busy and it can't go for hours. So let's dive right in. I want to kind of get as much as we can here. We'll keep it chronological. So going back, I know there's the debate between you and your mom and when you started wrestling. You say 4, she says 5. But either way, you've been wrestling for like 20 years now. And, you know, your career is so documented. And your career is so storied. Everybody kind of knows that. And I want to bring out some specifics. Like, I know you talk about it in the Flow documentary, actually, where there was that one match where I think you won 11-1. And that's the match that you and Mike Ironman knew you were going to be good because you were crying. I can't remember if it was during or after the match, but you were crying. I'm curious, like, I want to start there. Kind of, I don't know if you remember much about that, but what made you either cry or what made that switch to, like, okay, I'm going to be good. Like, I'm going to be dominant in wrestling.
Oh, I mean, I think overall I was just crying because I'd lost. I was going for third. And, like, I was still heartbroken over that loss at the time. And then I remember, like, I was just, I don't know, I just didn't want to be there. Like, I didn't want to wrestle anymore, like anymore that day. I was just so angry that I lost. And not only did I lose, I got pinned, I believe. Or, yeah, I think I got pinned. I can't remember completely, but and so I was really upset with not only that I lost, but the way I lost. And so, yeah, I was crying during this whole match. And Mike was just like, dude, you're winning. Like, come on. I'm like, I know. And
right.
I can't. And then, like, we didn't have that discussion, though, until we were, like, on our way back from, it was Cliff Keen, Postal National, until we had come back.
Sure.
And so, like, and that's when we kind of sat down and had that talk about, like, because that's where it's like you were completely broken in that moment. Like, you were done. And
yeah,
yet you still went out and you performed. And like, there's a way for, and like, and then he said, like, also that's where he learned, like, there's a way to switch, like, make that switch happen, so, I mean, like, that was the big moment for us. And I think that I kind of clung to that, and realized that even in now that hardship right there, like, I could persevere and, be really good at this.
And if somebody is listening right now that's either a parent of a youth wrestler or maybe they're a youth wrestler themselves, and they've had that early on adversity where it's not the end of the world, you're still young, you have so much time to develop, but you do want to get better, like, what would your advice be to that person?
I think one thing is, I would like to say that there's a many paths to being great at this sport. So don't get stuck in doing things one way, or thinking that if this one way is not working, that no way will work. I think that there's a lot of blessings in life. There's a lot of things that go into this, so it's like, and the blessings that I've had in this sport is having great coaches, great minds, that I've been able to mesh with and work on and work with, and great partners that I've had throughout my career. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that go into making a great athlete and a great wrestler. So I think that's a big thing is just, don't get stuck on one way, and don't think that if one way doesn't work, that another way won't. And also, I think the first step to being good at this sport is having fun with it. And I think that's with any sport, because if you don't enjoy it,
right.
I don't think then you will, if you don't enjoy it, if you don't love it,
yep.
then I think you almost write your own plateau. You make your own plateau. Because when you enjoy it and you love it and you have fun with it, you're always searching for a way to do it better, or tweak things, or make changes. So it will help you grow. So I think those two things are the big thing: is don't get stuck in one direction, and having fun and having a love for the sport to keep growing.
And it's interesting too, because having that passion, there's so many opportunities to have that joy derailed. And I want to dive into joy in a little bit, because you have an interesting quote on that. But, moving on through your high school career, like, I believe you were 204-3. And it was even like both you and I remember Mike Ironman saying it, maybe in the Flow documentary too, like, you weren't really getting the credit you deserve. And I'm curious if does that take away from the joy of wrestling? Does that take away from, if you start focusing, especially nowadays where we live in the social media world where everybody wants the credit, they want the rankings, they want the mentions, they want the tags. And if you're not getting that credit, if you're maybe getting looked over, it can rob you of your joy. Did you deal with that when you felt like you were really not on everybody's radar as much as you should have been for having such a dominant high school career?
Honestly, not really. I think mainly because at that time I didn't think about it too much.
Sure.
And I think also at the time, since I didn't think about it, it didn't really affect me, or at least I didn't care as much. And so, like, I can't say that it did. But like, I don't know. I guess I just didn't. I didn't think about being put out there as much. I just wrestled to wrestle, and it just, the cards fell where they were supposed to, and for me, and that just kind of went about life. So, and like, I don't know. I don't want to let other people's opinions on my career affect my outlook on what I do. I mean, even now, like, I think that for me, it's not the credit that I want. Like, because I think last year, I definitely made a point out there of talking about, the being overlooked,
I remember that.
And
Beat the
like,
Streets, I think it was.
Yeah, like being underrated or overlooked.
Yep.
I think the thing is, I think it's more so like, I don't want to be counted out, the praise. I just don't count me out. Sure. And I think that there's a big difference between the two. So like I said, like I don't know. It's like I don't really need a pat on the back, but I do at least need the respect. Those two things can be separate, but I definitely need one over the other.
Does it make you have a chip on your shoulder when people do count you out or overlook you? Like, I feel like now that the tide's kind of shifting. I mean, you won a world championship last year without letting anybody score a point on you. It's kind of hard to overlook that, right? Is like a chip on your shoulder gone when that happens and you can kind of feel that tide starting to shift?
No, it doesn't go away. Like I don't know. Like, at least for me, it doesn't. I don't know why it doesn't. I don't know what it is, but and it's not like. And I think some people may take it as like, you know, me being filled with bitterness or anger, but it's not even that, you know. I think a big thing about it for me is just I don't let people coming around, I don't let that seep into where I am now. And that's mainly because I don't want to forget where I came from. Yeah. And I don't want to forget how hard I had to work to get here, right? I don't want it to be like, well, it's okay now, so we can stop here, you know?
Yeah.
And plus, for me, I don't even think it's not the people's opinion that I'm looking for anymore. It's goals that I've set for myself ahead of myself to obtain. In order to obtain those goals, you know, I have to have a mindset without a finish line. I can't have a plateau. I have to keep striving to get better and better and better. You know, and as I go along, I would love it if people, recognize it or jump on the bandwagon or whatever. That'd be great. But at the same time, like it's more so like my career has put me in a place where I'm trying to put myself in a place where I'm still striving for something, and I don't want to forget the how gritty it is to get where you want to be.
Totally, and you talk about where you come from and where you've been, and I think your story is so fascinating because of not only what you've done on the mat, but even a couple months ago you tweeted out, all these accolades you have in the matches you've won, but you tweet about the fact that some days there's battles off the mat that are the greatest victories you ever had. And I want to dive into that a little bit because I know when you opened up a bit about it on the Flow documentary, it was kind of like, wow, how can you not be a fan of this guy? And your story and your actions speak volume, but still, like, it's in a tough sport where, I'm a Penn State guy, so you wrestled David Taylor, I'm like, oh, Taylor's a client of mine. And the sport does have, like, that, it's hard. Both Burroughs and Taylor are a client of mine, and watching them wrestle, like, it's always hard. And I think you've been in those weight classes where your opponents are fan favorites. And I think one of the things that does separate you, not just your talent, that's can speak to forever about that, but from a standpoint of where you've been, like, tell me a little bit about your background as far as, like, there was moments where you wanted to throw the towel all in, and thankfully your coaches call you and nothing crazy happens, but, like, talk me through a little bit of what you've battled depression wise in the past.
Well, it's just I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. Because when it's hard, I think it's hard for me to explain. And for a long time, I was ashamed to talk about it because people struggle to show empathy for things they can't see, they not understand. And so, like, and sometimes even when I did talk about it, people still wouldn't understand to the depth of what I was talking about, feeling this, this misery, or this feeling of just being down. But like in my life, I haven't had a perfect life, and I don't think anyone has, but I've had some struggles that happened in my past, and those things definitely haunted me and carried over with me in my later years, and I still even to this day still fight them, still struggle with it. But then I was afraid to ask for help. That was a big thing. And I think that's something that I try to preach now. Like that was a huge thing for me. Like I was afraid to ask for help. I didn't want to ask for help. And when I did that and I just tried to bury everything within myself, I just started kind of to implode. And, as I grew up and started going through life and then got to college and things progressed and got worse. And it was almost like, the more freedom that I got in life, the more the coping mechanisms became worse. Just started doing really dumb things and got to the point where I was just kind of done, and I didn't want that. I don't know. I just wanted the pain to be gone and to be over with. And I think I kind of wanted, I don't know, the one word that I could say was just freedom. I just wanted freedom. I wanted to be free of it. And, finally, like you said, like my coaches called me and really saved my life. And, I started going to therapy and figuring things out and talking through things and changing my mindset on a lot of things. And, and it's not perfect. It's not like I don't have my days where it's a struggle, but I definitely am in a way better place than I was, my freshman year of college.
And what have you found that if somebody listening does struggle with something, mental health is such an issue that's not talked about as much as it should be. What was it for you that helped you to be able to continue to focus? And really, you continued to focus and dominate. Like you had a rough freshman year mentally, but there was no signs of that on the mat. How did you continue to better yourself, stay focused, not get distracted? Like, what was your perspective through that?
Well, at the time we had like a team psychologist leader, or like a team leader and stuff, and he talked a lot about compartmentalizing things, and that was something that I kind of clung on to. And I think that, I really needed to do that in my life. And so when you gave this lesson about, when you're in this situation, you focus on this situation, you walk out the door, you move on to the next one. And it sounds easier said than done, because it truly is. And it took like a lot of conscious effort for me to get to this point. But I really had to focus on like, hey, when I'm in therapy, leave everything else behind. When I'm in class, leave everything else behind. When I go in the restroom, I'm in the restroom, leave everything behind. When I travel to compete, I'm traveling to compete, leave everything else behind. And then I would walk back out the door, and then I pick it back up, and then I'll take, go to the next thing and the next thing. So I think that helped me as far as being able to compete. But at the same time, I still was struggling with those things later on in my career, my college career. So then I had to figure overall, I think it just took that long to actually work through what was going on with me, and work through my issues and figure out what I needed to do. Or there are a lot of things. I think the weirdest things is that like, there are a lot of things I had to learn to accept. And there were a lot of things I had to learn to just, I don't want to say be okay with isn't how I want to say it, but like acceptance is a better word. Like I had to learn to accept some things that have happened in my past, and like accept the answers that I got, and accept that where I had to accept where I was, and also I had to accept also a big thing more so, I had to accept that I could get better, because the mindset for me is like, this is how I'm always going to be. There's no way I'm going to break free of this, which is why I wanted to be done, right? So I had to accept that that's not the end. This is not the end. This. I don't have to, like, this doesn't have to be my life. I can be more, And so I think there were so many things that I had to accept, and it was so hard to, because sometimes, it's almost like in an argument that you think that you're right on, and so you just won't let this person know, like, this is the way that it is.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. And you're just so stubborn on it. I had a lot of help to change that. And plus I made changes with what I was, I also clung to things that made me, that were one, good for me, but also made me happy. And one of the things that made me happy was making other people happy, making other people smile, have a good time. So, I mean, feel good, feel worth. And I think that I clung to that, and I still cling to that, and I wanted to cling to that. But I also had to find my own worth at the same time.
And when you talk about happiness too, I know you've talked about being joyful versus happiness, and I'm curious on your perspective. And for those listening who haven't heard you talk about that, at one point you decided you didn't want to be happy, you wanted to be joyful. What did that mean to you?
Well, I mean, happiness for me is kind of like, it's a fleeting thing. Like it's You know, like, it's just like, I'd be happy for the moment. And I view happiness as almost just like a moment, but a moment is fleeting. Like, and like I was saying in my interview, like I'd be happy winning matches. I'd be happy winning championships, but then I would just be back, like, you know, when it's all said and done and it fades away. Overall, I would be with my life and with my thoughts and with my heart within myself. I would feel miserable. So I wasn't joyful. Like I view joy as like an overall appreciation in life. You know, an overall, you know, it's like an overall happiness in life, basically. Sure. You know, so I didn't want to be happy anymore. I wanted to be joyful. And like, I knew I could be happy. Like, I could find moments in happiness and be happy. But then as soon as those, you know, would disappear, or the almost kind of like the fuel on those moments would go away, it would just fall back into the same dark hole. And I definitely wanted to figure out how to stay out of it, or climb out of it, because the thing about that happiness is that you'll get happy, you'll have this moment, and you'll feel like you're on wings, and you'll be up high, and then you'll smack down again, and then you'll be brought back up, and then you'll smack down again, and then up and down and up and down. And it's just like, and as each time you smack the ground, the hole just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So every time that you fall, it actually falls a lot further. And then on top of that, if you're denying what's happening, or you're not getting help with what's happening, that hole just digs on its own, is digging itself deeper too, because you're burying everything within you, right? And then that stuff is, you know, it becomes toxic, almost like it's filled with this toxicity, like you fall through, and now you're falling back through with the bad thoughts, the bad feelings, the pain, all that stuff that you don't want to deal with, right? Because you packed it all into this. So it's I don't know, man. It's a crazy roller coaster ride. So I definitely, you know, still stand by that to this day. Like, I don't want to be happy. I want to be joyful.
I love the perspective, and that's why I bring it up, because I think so many times people, it's also dangerous if you're chasing happiness. You know, I heard somebody say once that success is as addicting of a drug as anything out there, because people are chasing the next high and the next high. And I think that sounds like what you're saying, to the degree of, man, you can chase that happiness, but it's temporal, whether it's in sports or business or in a relationship, whatever it may be. If you're just chasing that high or that happiness, it can definitely be dangerous. And tell me too, like, you have such a bold act of faith. What role has faith played throughout your career and your journey?
Well, I think that, you know, especially now and it really later on in my life and my career, faith played more of a part than it did in the past. You know, I was definitely someone, I think I described my relationship with Christ perfectly in this poem/song I wrote. And it goes, it goes like this: I go to church every end of the week, and like a ritual, I go and take my seat. I open my ears, open my eyes, forgot my heart, so still I'm blind. I'm living in a world full of voices, deaf to ears. I make my choices, and when things go wrong, it ain't hard to explain. I look in the mirror, but I don't point out the blame. And so, like, when I wrote that, you know, I was writing about myself and how I was basically saying that God for me was a routine. It was something that I did every week. Yep. And something that I went through like every weekend, and on Wednesday I went to this, and I never really fully committed to him, and I never really gave my all to him. And then but then it changed, because then you know, because then it's what said, in all of my life, I want you to intervene, claim my soul, make my heart grow out of my routine. I don't want to give my life to God and say, hey, I'm saved. Isn't that enough? I want to be a man involved who doesn't wait until Sunday to finally call, you know? And that was basically, I want to grow in this. Like, I want this to grow in me. I want you to be a part of my life. I'm tired of just showing up on Sundays and saying, yeah, I believe in you. And then on Monday, I you know, knowing that I do, but don't live out the life and don't search for you throughout my journey, which life. So, you know, I want you to grow within me and become a part of my life. And so, as I've grown, you know, older and actually been around the guys on the world team, you know, that was a huge thing in 2006, getting to be around, like, everyone on the team, was a Christian. So seeing how these guys carried themselves and going to the Bible studies with them, and it's like, it kind of, you know, it was almost like I was led by example, you know, seeing guys like Snyder, Jordan, Travell, you know, Frank Molinaro, getting to talk with these guys, about Christ and ask questions. And I kid you not, like Snyder and I had debates, and Nashon Garrett even and I had debates.
Yeah.
Like through years, like we just would talk about Christ and debate about Christ. And my then my thoughts honestly started changing. And I think for me now I'm on this other journey. I'm actually on a journey to read the Bible 366. It's 366 days to read the Bible and through and so really I'm on this journey now of accepting and really just accepting the word for what the word says, for what the word is, and not not trying to put my own spin on it, not trying to make it so that it makes, because what I would used to do, a big thing I used to do is I used to try to make the Bible make sense to me.
Yeah, we try to adapt it, make it conform to us.
Right. And that the problem with that, and especially with how I would talk about Christ to others, was instead of giving him God, I was giving him still the world. And that's something that I can't do and I don't want to do. So I'm definitely, even in this journey of reading the Bible, I definitely just what I'm reading and when I'm writing about it, it's just accepting what God is saying, accepting what I'm reading, accepting it for what it says. Stop trying to conform it into a way that makes me feel good or makes it so I say it in a way that makes somebody else feel good. I need to accept all of Christ and all of what he says.
And was there anything that led to that specifically? Or was it just being around those guys kind of encouraged you to really, I know you grew up in a Christian household where your dad's a pastor, your mom's a worship leader, you've been around it your whole life. And at some, a lot of pastors will say pastors' kids have it tougher than anybody. Was it something specifically over time that kind of led you back, or was it just being around those guys and kind of being on that journey?
I don't think I ever really left.
Yeah.
I think it was more so personal things that as I changed and grew, that I came to realize kind of where I was coming from. Because I think with me, especially with my past history, I was, and how I was emotionally, I wasn't, the reason I looked for a way to have things make sense to me, especially being raised in a home where, you learn of Christ and, like you said, my dad was a pastor for a time and my mom was a worship leader. I was angry at God. I was angry at God. I was sad. I didn't have a lot of positive emotions going towards God at the time. And so, but also at the same time, it's really complicated because at the same time, I still believed in him. I know you're real. But I am so ticked off. And I think that that was partially the reason why I looked for ways to make sense to myself, because if I didn't, I would have walked away. I would have walked away completely and just been like, this is ridiculous, So I was almost like I was trying to look for excuses to keep me around, which is I don't need to excuse. I just need to accept, I don't need to understand. I just need to believe. I don't need to see. I need to have faith, So having all of that, so I think as I became healthier mentally and also learned to accept, Christ for just who he was, it started to grow more. And, and I'm not going to say being around those guys definitely helped, and be able to ask questions and have these conversations and talk with these guys, especially about their walks with faith. And I think this is why, God talks about having a congregation and having others to talk about this stuff with, and to have your brothers and your sisters around to help guide each other and be there for one another, so that these things can happen and these conversations can happen. And these were debates, questions, and I think that it was awesome because it was these guys, are having these conversations. We're all having these conversations, and there's no judgment. There's no harshness. It's just having a conversation, and one person able to ask questions, another person ask questions, and we all have different viewpoints. So to be able to have this conversation and those conversations and that experience was definitely a huge help.
I can only imagine. I mean, I know having a really good relationship with J'den and Frank and some of those guys, I know firsthand how deep their faith is and how much that can move you to when you respect somebody on various levels and then you talk to them about faith and it kind of brings it another level. So I'm going to change gears to talk about some recent events with 97 kilos, because otherwise I'm going to keep you here for 2 hours, and I promised you I'd keep this limited. Though you're going to have to come back for a part 2. But all right, so going back into the wrestling in recent events, last year, as we were just kind of talking about after Beat the Streets, you mentioned that you're the most underrated wrestler of all time, and you feel like you're one of the most overlooked wrestlers of all time. And I know after the World Championships, you were talking when people kept saying, what weight are you going? What weight are you going? And you really wanted to do what cemented your legacy the most. And which, by the way, like, you asked the fans, or you kind of did, like in the post-match press conference, you said, like, what do the fans want? And I think as a fan, like, I can say I think 97, it does cement your legacy more. And that seems to be the general response to the fan base. Like, I'm curious if that mindset of, we talk about the chip on the shoulder and being underrated, did that mindset play into the decision to go 97?
Not really. Like, it's more so for me, like, my decision was all based off of me trying to strive for my own personal, greatness, my own personal goals, I want to strive to push myself to be the best wrestler that I can be. I want to push my boundaries. And I've said this a couple times, but I don't want to be 60 years old, and I'd rather be 60 years old and never making another Olympic team, but knowing I strive to be the best I could possibly be, and win all the Olympic medals I ever could, and know that I never really tried to push myself to be something more. And everybody's different, and some people are like, screw that, I take the medals, and it's just like I can't in good conscience do that. Like, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. And I think some people even got it mixed up because they're saying that, some people are saying, well, what is he saying? Taylor's not a challenge. I'm like, no. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that for me and my journey, that this is going to be a test, with Snyder, with Sajulaya, with Sharifov, with Perez, with all these guys. That's the test that's going to really test me as a wrestler. In every aspect, and and like I think that this is a decision that is best for me to do that. I think it's fair enough to do that. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think that for me striving for that for myself, really what other people think about it is irrelevant.
Totally, and I think too. Like, I'm curious of your perspective and your process on making these decisions. Like, it's not just a weight decision, especially when you're a top level wrestler. You have such tough decisions to make constantly. Even, you've changed OTCs, like even recently, like you left Missouri to go to the Olympic Training Center. Now you're going to Ohio State. Like, what? And I know you're splitting time there, but the point being of having to make those tough decisions of knowing when to make a certain move. What goes into that process? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it prayer? Is it all the above? Like, what goes into the process for you specifically when you have to make those tough decisions?
Well, I think that, I usually solve a lot of my problems with a T-chart with positives and negatives. So even like coming out to Ohio State, the positive is that, they had, bigger bodies. And that was a big thing for me, like having the bodies to be able to roll around with. And like, I think that with, coming from, Colorado Springs, and I talked with KJ about it too, just like that way we can get looks, get the feel that we want, because the EAP guys were great. But, at the same time, it'd be good to be able to, throughout the year, get the feel of senior level athletes, and that's something Ohio State had, and that was huge. I think that also I trusted Travell, and Travell was a huge factor into it, because it's just like I trained with him in 2016. We were on the same Olympic team. I got to talk with him, get to know him, and plus I've been hanging out with him since the last couple of years. Because he's coaching Snyder. So I mean, like, it's not like it's a friendships there that I already had established. So not only was I going to get the partner, but I also the people around here, that I knew, even the guys on the Ohio State wrestling team itself, I kind of already had some relationship with too, just competing either, around them, against them, or seeing them at camp. So, there wasn't really a downside. The only other downside is, like, I'm not in my own bed, but, like, that's minuscule, that's small. So, I mean, I definitely think that I saw more benefit to this than struggle, and it's been great so far.
And do you think, like, going back to what we were saying earlier, it feels like the momentum, the perspective is shifting to where even the early chatter and different polls people put up on Twitter and things like that, like, the overwhelming response is, hey, I think J'den's going to make the team. I think the team looks like Taylor 86 and J'den 97, and I don't think that's anything negative to Kyle. I think that's such a powerful testament to what you've done. And it's like, you did just win 2 straight world championships. You did just win the world championships where you didn't allow a single point. Does it feel to you like the tide is shifting when you're very self-aware and you're aware to what's going on around you, what the perspective is around you? Do you feel like the momentum is shifting and the perspective is shifting?
I don't know. I don't even think that's really for me to say. I think that's all fan perspective, and that's on them to make their predictions. It's my job to prepare to do what needs to be done. So, for me, the way that I see it, it's like, it doesn't matter what the fans say, because I'm the one that's still going to have to show up in the semis, wrestle 2 matches to even get to Snyder. And then on top of that, I'm the one that's still going to have to then wrestle Snyder and find a way to win best 2 out of 3. So, that is my job. And I think that no matter what perspective or what people think of the past, even for me, like, the past does not affect, for me at least, within my mindset, it does not affect the present. And if anything, because if we're going to go off the past, technically, Snyder's still, way above me. So, like, that doesn't help me out too much. Olympic gold, 2 world golds, and he's medaled in every world and Olympic tournament he's been to, since 2015. So, and that's more medals than I have. So if we're going off past, that still doesn't stack well for me. So then so for me, the past does not affect the present. And, my job is to be ready when the moment comes to do it, to do my best and put my best foot forward. And that's what I plan to do.
And when you give Kyle a lot of credit, and I think everybody, including myself, and I'm sure Kyle's given you a lot of credit, because you continued to level up, and throughout your entire career, from youth to high school to college to senior level, you've continued to level up. How at this point, when you've had so much success, you've won at every level, how do you now level up again to say, okay, I've done more than what 99% of wrestlers will ever do, and I want to be even better, to really cement my legacy? What's the focus to continue to level up, even now, 20 plus years later, where you've continued to level up so much? How do you keep doing that now, specifically going into, the Olympic trials in just over a month?
Well, I think a big thing is, like, I ask questions. I think it's huge. It's like I always ask questions. I always look, always have something to look for to get better. When I go through my technique, I'm asking questions. When I'm going live, get positions, asking questions. There's nothing nobody can teach me. So I think that alone allows for me to continue to strive to get better. I think also, becoming more, I think as you get better, your workouts, it's not completely about how hard you go, but what you put in it. And so, becoming in and being more focused and getting more out of practices is something that I definitely, I take pride in and work on a lot. I think that's the great thing about, working with KJ and then coming out to, Ohio State and working with Travell and working with the guys. Like, it's been huge, because I've been able to, like, not only, I've been having KJ's perspective for 2 years now, and I still get that. And then, and it's great, and that's my home base. But it's nice to also be able to take, my questions elsewhere and getting answers and figuring out, different positions, getting different feels. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just always ask questions. I never know everything. I never know everything. I'm always willing to learn, always willing to gain. I mean, even this past time, when I came out to Ohio State for the first time, there was so much I took back and added on to my workouts, to mindset things, to whatever it was. There was so much I took back, and even when I went back and then I worked on those things there, and then I learned more as I was back in Colorado Springs, and then I come back this time around to Ohio State. I have things I'm still working on and grinding on, and then I'm actually gonna have more questions. So I think that's the big thing for me. Always have questions. Always have questions. Don't ever say that you just know. Like that. I think that's why I've done so well the last couple of years. I've always looked to get better. So I've always had that question.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. I mean, Ben Askren actually tweeted out a quote today that somebody had tweeted that said, "I've noticed people who need feedback the least want it the most. Unfortunately, people who need feedback the most want it the least." So it's interesting that I just saw that earlier today, and here you're kind of saying the same thing. Like, most people would probably look at you and not think you're somebody who's asking so many questions, and that's the one not the one focus, but a main focus is asking questions. And here you've had so much success, so that's interesting to see for sure. So listen, I know I got to let you go here, but one last topic, and I'll let you go for part one. I know you're a WWE fan, and I grew up a huge WWE fan. So we got to talk pro wrestling just for a few minutes. Did you start watching pro wrestling when you were young? How young were you when you started watching pro wrestling? Who was your favorite wrestler?
I don't know how young I was. I think I didn't even watch it live on TV. I was watching it on YouTube with my dad. And one of my dad's favorite wrestlers was Ric Flair, but he also loved like Junkyard Dog and whatnot, and Ultimate Warrior. So like he liked those guys. And I remember watching it, and there were a couple times where we watched the matches when I got a little bit older, like I think it was probably around like 10 or 11, that were get guys getting smashed with chairs or sledgehammers or something like that. And for me as a child, like I thought it was real. Like this is all realistic. Like it's all real. Like that's where I'm at. Like, this is real. Wow, oh my gosh. So then I remember one day I asked my dad, I'm like, "Hey, Dad, is this real?" And my dad's answer was, "J'den, if you ever hit a man with an object like a sledgehammer or a chair like that over the head," and he said, "If you ever hit someone with an object like that and he gets up, run." So there was my answer when I was a child. And even now, like I still have so much respect for it because it's just controlled chaos. That's all that it is.
Do you ever think of going that route?
Not really. I mean, I at least not now. I'm so focused in on what I got to do. I haven't really put thought to it. But like, would I be completely against it if it ever crossed my table? No, that's not. I'm not. I definitely won't say no to that. But
sure.
No, it's funny you bring this up because Jacob Casper.
He just was on the podcast. That's what made me think of it. He was telling me that when you guys were in Cuba, you guys were talking about it.
Dude, we were going in on some WWE combo. Like we were intense, and everyone else was kind of like, Bryce. I remember Bryce Meredith was in there. It's like, I don't even know what you guys are talking about. Like we were going in, and like everyone else in the room was like lost. Like, yeah, me and him definitely had a really good conversation about it. And fun talking about some of the schemes and the storylines and which ones we thought were cool and which ones we thought were terrible. But I mean, it was awesome getting to talk it out with somebody.
Literally, he came on the podcast last week and we went like an hour and 45 minutes because the first 45 minutes was about the Olympic dream, and then we spent about an hour talking about his WWE tryout, what his gimmick would be, and it was just a fun time. I feel like I'm surprised that more freestyle and folk style wrestlers aren't WWE fans, and you're kind of making me feel old. I mean, I'm 33, and when I started watching wrestling, there was no YouTube yet. Like this was like 1999. I'm sitting there flipping back and forth between WCW and WWE, and I'm watching Mick Foley and Chainsaw Charlie go off the stage, and that was my whole start in wrestling as a whole, was my love for that. So it's always fun when I see somebody that's like I think Burroughs was telling me one of the reasons he got into it was because he loved the Ultimate Warrior. He loved the pump. He loved like the run out.
Yeah, the dude was awesome to watch. I like people who can really like connect with the crowd, like somehow, some way, you know, like they can, like, you know, obviously The Rock, you know, is great with that. Ultimate Warrior, great with that. Even now, I think one of the guys that did it better before he became the Fiend was Bray Wyatt. You know, and I even still like the Fiend, like, you know, I don't know. I like it. Like, it's a good, I don't know. It's a good, I guess, scheme.
But that Sister Abigail, like, that gimmick was nuts. Like, all of a sudden, Bray Wyatt's music hits, and the whole crowd, like, lights up their phone, and he walks out with that lantern. That was an amazing gimmick.
Yeah.
Like, he got over good.
Well, I think when he won the WWE Championship the first time over in the Elimination Chamber, afterward, you know, that was one of the best, I think, like, post, you know, world, you know, WWE Championship promos ever. Like the talk that he gave after he won it, like, I remember watching it and like having goosebumps. Like, dude, that's legit. Like, that was legit. So yeah, Bray Wyatt definitely right now I think is one of the best on the mic guys. I don't really like the I don't know, the Fiend kind of feel where he starts going from jolly to happy.
Yeah.
It's rubbing off on me, so I'm getting used to it. But he, you know, I don't know. He's definitely was one of my favorites on the mic, and I really wish that WWE would have given him a longer title run the first time he won it. So
I know,
so we'll see. You know,
like,
we'll see.
I can't ever really, with Triple H and Vince McMahon behind the scenes, I can't ever really like disagree with them and say they don't know what they're doing. But it was the same thing with like when Daniel Bryan won his first championship. I was so all about that, and I was surprised they didn't get him back there. They didn't get behind him more. Like, it's wild, man. But it's funny too, because I told you I did like a deep dive on you before you came on, because I followed your career. But you know, I always really wanted to get as deep as I can on this podcast. And you know, I'm looking at all these things like, wait a minute. All of a sudden, I remembered you're only 24 years old.
Yeah,
and I'm like, this dude could go to multiple more Olympic quads. He could go in the WWE. Like, have you given much thought of your career past, you know, this Olympic cycle? Like, have you given much thought to what you want to do? I know that even early on, like, you did an interview where you said, like, when you were in high school, you never thought about college and the Olympics and all that. And that probably helped you just focus on being present. Is that how you are right now? Like, you're not thinking about the future? Because, man, the opportunities for what you could do are endless.
I think that, like, I give thought towards it, but like, I try to stay in this moment right now for what I'm trying to. Like, there are a lot of things that, like, I have interest in, you know, whether it be with music or sign language, with, you know, creative writing. I even thought about, you know, like, I don't want to fight in the UFC at all, but, like, you know, I've even thought about, you know, coaching someone in wrestling who's, you know, a UFC fighter or something like that, you know, being someone of that effect. So, like, I've put thought towards things, but, like, you know, I just try to stay focused on right now and enjoy the moment and give my 100% for this. And, but yeah, you know, WWE, you know, it's something that I love to watch, and it looks fun. So you know, so if Casper once Casper, you know, gets in there and makes it, and he wants to put in a good word, maybe I should have to do that.
I'll be rooting for that. That's for sure. Well, listen, man, I know
tag team.
Yeah, 100%.
Casper, right? You know.
I'm all for that, man. I'll help you guys with the websites, the merch. Like, let's go. Oh, man. All right, guys. That is all the time we have for today's episode. More so because that's all the time J'den has for today's episode. But he's going to come back on. We're going to do a part 2. And if you want to hear that part 2, send me a message. If there's anything else that you want me to ask J'den or that you want to hear from J'den, send me a message. Let me know. And be sure to subscribe so when part 2 comes out, you're the first to be notified. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for dealing with the audio issues. And I hope you come back next time for another episode of the Baschamania podcast. See ya.
And the beat goes on, goes on, goes on, goes on.